Welcome to this explainer. Here's something I've realized lately. Change is incredibly hard, especially when the old way of doing things is so deeply ingrained in us. Let's face it, for almost 20 years, YouTube thumbnails have been designed for one very specific audience with one singular goal, to get a human being to click. But we are officially entering a totally new era. Today, we're going to challenge that 20-year-old habit and dive into exactly why your thumbnails, titles, and descriptions are now vital data for a completely different audience. So who is actually looking at your thumbnail before your viewers do? For years, you've optimized every single pixel, every bright color, and every shocked face for human psychology. But today, there is a brand new, non-human audience analyzing your images before a real person even sees them. It's AI. And here's the part creators keep getting wrong. This audience isn't clicking on your video. It's recommending it.
Historically, we catered completely to humans, often relying on flashy, sometimes misleading clickbait to get that view. But Google's latest research reveals that your thumbnail, title, and description are now what they call semantic signals. They aren't just background metadata anymore. They're the raw data points used by AI to understand and push your content. So if you're only optimizing for human clicks using empty hype, you're literally ignoring the underlying system that decides who even sees your video in the first place.
Okay, let's jump into section 1. Enter the librarian. To really wrap our heads around this massive shift, I want you to think of the recommendation algorithm as a highly intelligent, incredibly fast librarian. Imagine walking into a massive library and just handing this librarian a picture, no title, no description, just an image of what you're curious about. A good librarian looks at that picture, figures out the subject, and points you right toward the correct shelf. But if you hand them a flashy, completely irrelevant picture with no real connection to the book you want, they can't help you at all. The AI needs the actual substance of your video. If your thumbnail is a blank or misleading picture, the algorithm is lost, and it simply cannot connect you with your audience. Let's put a technical name to this brilliant librarian. It's called a large recommender model, or LRM. And what's truly wild here is that Google actually adapted its incredibly powerful Gemini language model specifically for video recommendations. So instead of just filing your videos under random, meaningless ID numbers like the old legacy systems did, this new tech thoroughly reads your content. It creates a deep, semantic understanding, basically a mental note of what your video is actually about. So how exactly does the LRM build that understanding? It generates what's known as a Semantic ID. The system builds this profile by pulling in multimodal inputs. It's looking at your thumbnail and video frames, reading your title and description, parsing your transcript, and even listening to the audio. It fuses all these signals together to generate a unique, highly readable semantic ID. Your video is no longer just a string of random numbers. It's a rich, multi-dimensional token. Moving right along to section 2, building a vector hierarchy. What's absolutely fascinating is how these semantic IDs actually organize the billions of videos on the platform. It builds a deeply structured map, or a vector hierarchy. Think of it exactly like a library's call number system. The first layer sets a broad category, like cooking. The next layer narrows it down to a specific niche, like Italian cooking. And the final tokens pinpoint the exact content, like a specific pasta making technique. Because of this, the AI librarian doesn't just casually recognize your video, she knows exactly which aisle, which shelf, and which exact spot it belongs in. Which brings us to section 3, solving the cold start. This exact layered system solves the single biggest hurdle for brand new creators, the cold start problem. Historically, algorithms really struggled to recommend new videos because they had zero watch history. The system literally required thousands of human views before it could gather enough behavioral data to know who to serve the video to. If you didn't have a massive pre-existing audience, you were stuck in algorithmic limbo, waiting for momentum that you just didn't have. But semantic IDs solve this issue in practice, not just on paper. Under the old method with random hash IDs, you had to wait for all those views, and items were grouped by guesswork. With the new Semantic ID method, your video is understood instantly through that vector hierarchy we just talked about. The algorithm no longer needs to wait for 1,000 views to figure out if your video is good. It understands the meaning the very second you hit upload. Let's look at the hard data in section 4, the PLUM framework proof. If you're sitting there wondering if this is all just theoretical, I promise you it's not. We have the hard data proving this massive shift is running in production right now. A joint research paper from YouTube and Google DeepMind introduced what they call the PLUM framework.
This framework is actively replacing old embedding tables with these exact AI-derived semantic IDs. Now, PLUM stands for Adapting Pre-trained Language Models for Industrial-Scale Generative Recommendations. Yeah, I know, that is a massive mouthful. But essentially, it's a framework that completely reframes how recommendations work by turning the whole thing into a generative retrieval task. In plain English, the AI doesn't just match generic tags anymore. It literally predicts and generates the exact semantic ID for the very next video a user is going to want to watch, using both your multimodal content and user watch behaviors. And the real-world results are absolutely staggering. In live A/B testing, the PLUM model drove a massive 4.96% lift in click-through rates on YouTube Shorts, and a highly significant 0.76% lift on long-form video. Now, on a platform with billions of daily users, those fractional percentages translate to monumental, platform-shifting changes in who gets recommended. This definitively proves that the era of memorization-focused models, the ones that constantly struggled with cold starts, is ending. We are moving right into the era of generative models that rely entirely on semantic understanding. Your content is being recommended because the AI actually understands its intrinsic meaning, not just because it memorized a pattern of past clicks. Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, Designing Semantic Signals. Let's turn all this theory into an actionable strategy you can use right now. Because knowing this is only half the battle, right? Applying it is how you win. I really want you to internalize this idea. Think of your thumbnail exactly like a movie poster. A great movie poster doesn't spoil the plot, but in one single glance, it shows you the genre, the tone, and the main character. A good poster doesn't need a synopsis. The costume, the setting, the color grade, that's plenty for your brain to know what you're signing up for. You need to treat your thumbnail exactly like this. Set the context immediately so the AI librarian knows right where to shelve your video, while still appealing to the human who will eventually watch it. So, as we look toward 2026, here is your new playbook. First, you've got to ditch the empty clickbait. It actively harms your discoverability because it confuses the AI. Second, visually represent the core topic in your thumbnail. Third, make sure your thumbnail, title, and transcript all align perfectly to tell the exact same semantic story. And finally, provide rich data, clear audio, good pacing, accurate metadata to feed your semantic ID. To successfully optimize today, your signals have to align so the large recommender model can build your video's vector identity. I'll leave you with this provocative thought to ponder for your own channel. As you design your next upload, are you feeding the system true semantic meaning? Or are you still handing the AI librarian a blank picture? The creators who master these signals are the ones who are going to thrive in this entirely new era of generative discovery. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.